The discipline of anthropology defines what is you. Okay. And it defines what is your culture. And it defines, or let us say, it distinguishes how your culture is different from the other cultures. Non-tribal population who are often characterized by a society like this, right? So they have, like, let us say, combining all the non-tribal population, they have something like settled agriculture or market-based economies or a social structure that is having complex caste system. A widespread violence and like lot of tribal displacements, all these things have happened. And like there is even today the problem of Naxalism and Maoism. So the core of the Naxalism and Maoism coming to that particular like resistance movements, step into their shoes and understand what is their problem. And there should be common values. There should be shared beliefs. There should be shared principles. There should be common values that is actually sort of not just protecting the non-tribals, but also the tribes. Welcome to VisionIAS. Today, again, there is a good article, good concept I have brought in front of you from the section of anthropology, an anthropological look at India's tribal divide. So now, there is something that we need to look at. See, I want you to take a moment and think, what is your identity? Okay, what makes you? Think about this. What makes you? Okay, is it your family? Or is it your community? Or is it your language? Or the place? Or the place you call it as a home? So what makes you? Now, when you look at this study of what makes us humans, right? This study of basically what makes us humans or what makes our cultures around. And so, like, if you look at the cultures around, it is so diverse. Wonderfully, it is diverse, right? So this is the core of anthropology. So the discipline of anthropology defines what is you. Okay. And it defines what is your culture. And it defines, or let us say, it distinguishes how your culture is different from the other cultures. Okay. And all these things makes the core of anthropology. Okay. Today, we will use this lens to understand and explore one of the most complex and important social issue in India. Okay, that is the complex relationship between the tribes and the non-tribal populations in India. Okay, so we will surely look into this. We will be looking into, is it just a political issue or an economic issue, or is it having something beyond this, like a story of culture, a story of identity, and a struggle for existence in the face of change. So we will be looking at such very much a deep-seated differences that you can find in ethnicity and identity of the different cultures, especially the tribes. Okay, and how, there is a sort of a pressure of mainstream development on them, and how is the new India, or how is this modern India shaping its influence on the tribes. Okay, so this is something that we'll be looking at. I am Suhas Sir. I'm a senior faculty at VisionIAS. I teach geography, environment, and anthropology. And today I'm bringing something very interesting, which is actually a complex issue, and we'll be learning about this. Okay, now think about this. Let us start from this. We have looked about this, I asked you a while ago. Now, first thing that I would like to ask you is, what comes to your mind when we say, or when you hear the word tribe? what comes to your mind? Often, if you look at it, we have a stereotype regarding the tribes, right? We think they are isolated communities, they are primitive communities, they are actually sort of untouched by the modernity, right? So, this is what we'll be thinking about them, correct? Isn't that? So, we'll be looking at them in this particular context. So, now, on the other hand, like if you look at the way anthropology looks at them, so when you keep the lens of anthropology between what makes you think about the tribe and what they are, then you will understand a different version of it. Okay, so in India also, if you see, the term tribe is having a specific meaning, right? So it basically refers to a group of people. Officially, it is recognized, I mean, the government is recognizing that group of people as scheduled tribes. Okay, so according to 2011 census, we have almost 8.6% of the population share of the scheduled tribes. 8.6% of the total Indian population are the scheduled tribes, amounting to around 104 million people. Okay, and this 104 million people are not single or a monolithic group. Okay, but they are diverse. There are more than 700 plus distinct communities. Okay, there are more than 700 plus distinct communities, which actually exhibits unique language, unique customs, unique traditions, and unique way of living. Okay, so like if you look at this 104 million people, out of them the major chunk, or like let us say the major piece of the population actually is like concentrated in the states of Maharashtra, I mean basically Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Odisha. Okay, so now to actually understand them, to like sort of recognize these distinct ethnic groups regarding their unique identities that is actually rooted in their history and social structures and several other aspects, we need to look into further of this particular topic. Okay, now let us look at this further. Okay, now let us look at this. There are basically two worlds, or there are two sides of identity. Like think about this. Here we are discussing about a classic anthropological perspective or a case which is showing you two distinct identities that you are coming in contact with. Okay, so on the one side, you have the mainstream non-tribal population who are often characterized by a society like this, right? So they have, like, let us say, combining all the non-tribal population, they have something like settled agriculture or market-based economies or a social structure that is having complex caste system, right? But on the other hand, you have the tribes. Okay, when you look at the tribal communities, what are their identities? First one, shifting agriculture, that is called Jhum cultivation. So where like they have a reciprocal relationship between the nature and their survival. Okay, where their way of life depends much on the nature. Okay, they would cyclically clear the forest land and cultivate them and take the produce that the nature gives without any pesticides, insecticides, or synthetic inputs. Okay, so now on the other hand, they have a characteristic that is a communal ownership. Like for example, no resource or no land is actually owned by an individual, but it is owned by the community, the entire tribal group. Okay, so this concept actually is a clash between the mainstream society, that is the non-tribal populations who believe in private property, right? And thirdly, they have very distinct language and customs. Many tribal languages are no way related to the major Indian languages. Okay, and they have unique festivals they celebrate. They have unique rituals they perform, and unique art forms, especially if you look at the sense of self that is contained in their own aspects. Okay, so so now when you look at the differences between the tribes and the non-tribes, it is of course not as simple to say it is the difference of developed versus undeveloped. So it is way beyond that. It is more than that. Okay, so the mainstream development that you can see is with the roads, industries, and commercialization and economization, and also encroachment on tribal lands, and they're erasing their fundamental identity markers or threatening their identity markers, and also the sense of creating a profound sense of loss and marginalization amongst the tribes. So this is something that is the two different societies or two different communities and the interaction between them. Okay, so that is what we have seen so far. Now, it is, now, as this says clearly, this isn't developed versus undeveloped, but it is a fundamental clash of worldviews about land, community, and identity. Okay, so that is what we are going to look at now. So further, now, see, I told you these are the identity markers of the tribes. Jhum cultivation, that reciprocal relationship with the forest they have, communal ownership, where there is no concept of private property like the mainstream non-tribals, like the distinct cultures, they have unique language, festivals, rituals, art forms, and several others that gives the sense of self-belongingness. Okay, now, further, let us get a case study here. Now, looking at this case study, Bastar region conflict. Okay, now let us look at this case study. See, the tensions between these two worldviews erupts often because, this tensions always has resulted in some sort of conflict. And if you look into the core issue that has driven it, it will be very simply the issues of land, resources, and the political representation. Okay, so there are many incidents where you can see that the struggle of the minority can be seen where they are actually looking forward to protect their identity and prevent the erosion of their cultural traits in this present changing world. Okay, so now I would like to bring this case study in front of you that's called the Bastar region conflict. See, now Bastar is in Chhattisgarh region. Okay, and you can see for decades there is a tribal community. I mean, there are certain tribal communities like Gonds and Halbas. Okay, they have lived in this forest. They have depended on this forest. They have revered this forest. They have protected these forests. Okay, but what happened? It is the corporates led extraction that happened to go for massive land acquisition, and also that resulted in displacement of these decade and century old communities. Now, this happened to fuel that discontent and also bring a long-standing conflict between the tribals and the non-tribals, where the tribal communities were dispossessed, marginalized, and they were eventually drawn into armed movements. Now, what you can see is this struggle or this struggle for their land or fight for their way of life or their traditions or to protect their own very existence made a long-standing conflict. Now, what you can see is here the fight was against the extractive economy, because what was there is their land, which was let us say their land which was considered as the home, is today been exploited for its mineral wealth, destroyed. Okay, So now what happened was, like historically, if you look at, you can date back to almost 1910. There was Bhumkal rebellion, where you can see that the tribal leader Gundadhur, okay, the tribal leader Gundadhur happened to lead this particular the tribal resistance against the British policies that happened to put restrictions on the access to the forests. And also, it exploited the local tribes over there. So, starting from there to the modern day issues like the Naxalist and the Maoist insurgencies, you can see. Here, like basically, I'm not justifying the Naxalism or Maoism, but what I'm trying to tell you is these Naxalism or Maoist insurgency, where you can see the armed groups, are like many of them are the tribes. Okay, many of them are the tribes, and they are fighting their own state and the corporates against the control. I mean, against the control of land and resources that is taken for economizing. Okay, so now there were also certain states counter, like insurgency operations like Salva Judum militia. Okay, so it has actually like sort of what you can see is a widespread violence and like lot of tribal displacements. All these things have happened, and like there is even today the problem of Naxalism and Maoism. So the core of the Naxalism and Maoism coming to that particular like resistance movements are because of this modern resource extraction. Okay, and the displacement of the tribal communities which had taken this as their home for centuries. Okay, so that is the thing. Adding to this, I would like to show you one more case study now, explain one more case study that is regarding Tripura. Okay, see, this is one more interesting case study which you should be aware of. Like, for example, the state of Tripura. It was once a princely state where it was dominated by the tribal population. But, like, if you look at the partition of India that happened in 1947 or the Bangladesh Liberation War that happened in 1971, these two events happened to induce a large-scale influx of Bengali-speaking refuge. Okay, so this had demographically changed demographically it has changed the proportions in the society of Tripura, where by 2011, you can see the indigenous Tripura people have become the minority in their own state. Okay, so like the demographic change that has been to this extent has actually fueled conflicts over land and resources. Okay, so now indigenous people who actually are like they basically they are recognized by their own culture and their own language, that is Koborak, and also they have, the political influence they had, everything is being eventually eroded. So because of erosion of these culture, language, and the political influence, now it has begun the movements for autonomy as well as self-determination. See, these movements have escalated tension. These movements have escalated widespread violence, and one of the most tragic incidents in the history is the Mandai massacre that happened in 1980. Okay, is the Mandai massacre that happened in actually 1980. Is that clear? So basically, like, I'll write it here. Mandai massacre that happened in 1980. So this is something that you can see. But see, the government of India has come up with several solutions to it, like the creation of Tripura Tribal Areas Autonomous District Council. Okay. Tripura's Tribal Areas Autonomous District Council. Okay, here is the Mandai massacre. Okay, so autonomous district councils that has come, where basically you can see these district councils can come up with the political solutions But still, there are certain tensions regarding the identity, regarding the land ownership, and also the political representations, all these things. Still, that is actually keeping the state's social landscape under disturbance. Okay, so this is something that you can see. So now, what is the way forward? What is the way forward? When you look at the way forward, see, like basically, yeah, the path forward. So basically, when you look at the path forward, anthropology will not always come with the answers, but it can give you a perspective to think in a different way. Okay, so like moving beyond the simple narrative of development versus tradition, which is a binary narrative, we should actually instead look at the tribal communities, like, like, see, okay, let us say like this. We should look at tribal communities where, as they are the unique cultures and they are the unique knowledge systems, and they are, so that way they are a valuable asset. But what we are looking at presently is that we are looking at these tribal communities as the obstacle to progress. But we have to go beyond that thought process and value their unique cultures and knowledge systems and look at them as valuable assets. So now, see, this basically involves three things. We have to reimagine what is development. We have to protect the land rights. We have to foster dialogue. What do you mean by this? See, reimagining development. Basically, you need to design the policies like which should be very much culturally sensitive and also allow these communities to actually have a say over what is happening with respect to their life. Okay, that is the reimagining of development. Okay, like with their life, as in what happens to their land, what happens to their resources. This is something I'm speaking about. They should have the voice to speak. Secondly, protecting the land rights. See, basically, here when we speak about, we have to uphold the legal protections for the tribal land. Like, for example, the Forest Rights Act. This one will ensure that their livelihoods, traditionally they had been dependent on, is not destroyed. Okay, so that is something that we need to look at. Thirdly, fostering dialogue. See, basically, to understand the two communities by each other, there should be a platform where the tribes and the non-tribal communities can engage in sharing their ideas, sharing their problems, grievances, and looking for solutions from each other. So that ways there should be a common ground. That is fostering dialogue. So that means this particular tribal, non-tribal divide is basically a story of unequal power. Okay, where you can see there is cultural clash and also the human desire for belongingness. So what I would say is we can begin to see how there is the different ethnicity, identity, and regionalism that is not as an abstract concepts, but these are the basic markers that is shaping the lives of communities. Okay, so we need to look into it in a very sensitive manner, and we need to understand the other side and come up with the policies that brings a median path. Okay, so that is something we have to understand our shared humanity. Like respect, like we should bring the respectful actions. That ways we need to show dignity for other communities also, not just ours. And there should be empathy. Listen to them. That's the fostering dialogue where the platform listen to them with compassion. Step into their shoes and understand what is their problem. And there should be common values. There should be shared beliefs. There should be shared principles. There should be common values that is actually sort of not just protecting the non-tribals, but also the tribes. Okay, so this is something that we need to look at. So by understanding, like here it is written, by understanding these anthropological dimensions, we can begin to bridge the divides. We can begin to bridge the divides and celebrate the wonderful diversity that makes us human. So what you can see is either in this particular lecture or the previous one where I told you about the decolonization of anthropology in the Indian perspective, both of them were showing how you can understand our society, how you can understand the different, other societies through a compassionate lens and through a wide lens that actually is very accommodative and respectful. That is anthropology. So again, I'm telling you, like I said in the previous video, the same thing I'm telling you again. Anthropology makes you a compassionate administrator or a civil servant. Okay, so understanding the people who are governed is very important for the ones who are governing. And the bridge between governed and governing is the anthropology. Thank you.